Hello and welcome to another edition of History Science Fiber. I'm Zoe McDonald, I'm a biologist, and today we are dyeing with lungwort, also known as Lobaria pulmonaria or frog blanket. Now, today's episode comes with a bit of a conservation asterisk, and that's that in some areas of the world, this is of conservation concern and is extremely rare. So if you're in one of those areas, please don't dye with it. I'm here on the west coast of British Columbia. It's plentiful, and it falls often on the forest floor where it can be harvested ethically. So please check before foraging. So what is lungwort? Lungwort is a lichen, and lichens are composite organisms that are made up of algae and or cyanobacteria living within filaments of multiple fungi or mushroom species. I did a video on an introduction to dyeing with lichens, and I'll put a link in the description below. When wet, the upper surface of lungwort turns a bright green due to the algae, but it also has cyanobacteria on the undersurface. Lungwort is so named because it looks like lung tissue with its ridges and lobes and is a large leafy-like lichen which grows on tree bark and mossy rocks. It likes to grow in humid conditions in mixed forests of conifers and deciduous trees. And because it grows where the air is clean, its presence can be indicative of a healthy and mature forest. Here in the Pacific Northwest, it can be plentiful and it's packed with nutrients. Where it falls on the forest floor, it contributes significantly to the nitrogen availability for trees. But when foraging for dyeing, be sure to collect from the forest floor or off fallen branches. Aim to collect about twice as much by weight as the fiber you're using for your project. If you aren't sure how much to collect, you should know that it provides food for mammals, such as deer and mice. So you can always think of collecting about as much as a hungry deer might collect. For this project, I wanted to dye with wool and silk for a weaving project. One of the great parts of dyeing with lichens is that you don't actually need to mordant. As long as your fiber is clean, you can get right to the dyeing. Here I used 22 grams of wool and 52 grams of silk for a total of 74 grams, which is slightly less than 0.2 pounds or 2.5 ounces. The silk was cleaned by simmering for an hour with orvis paste, which is a mild soap that works well on animal fibers. I then weighed out my lichen and used 146 grams or 0.3 pounds or 5 ounces to achieve a 2-to-1 weight of fiber ratio. Or to put it another way, I used twice as much dried lichen as my weight of fiber. Now at this stage, I like to first insert one of these paint mesh bags you can pick up at many paint stores. Originally they're for filtering paint, but they're great for dyeing. I was introduced to them through a dyer in Washington State named Alyssa Allen. If you don't have one, you will need to figure out a way to filter out your lichen pieces from your fiber so it doesn't get all tangled up. You can do this through decanting your dye liquid through cheesecloth or a fine strainer. I just put in one of these bags. This is a 5-gallon size. Once that's in place, I chopped up the lichen using scissors over the pot. I added the water from the tap and placed it on the stove. From there, the lungwort was simmered for an hour and allowed to cool. While that was cooling, I pre-wetted and soaked the fiber to help it sink into the dye pot. Then I removed the bag with the lichen pieces and added in my fiber. It heated back up to a simmer for an hour and then allowed it to cool overnight. Lichen dyes often intensify, given a little bit more time in the dye pot. So I did try something new that didn't work, but I thought I would include it anyway. I was curious if using iron mordant as a modifier would darken the color. So I made up a jar of iron mordant with water and about a teaspoon of ferrous sulfate and added in about a hank of wool and left it for 2 minutes. It did not darken at all. The part of the hank, as you can see on the right, this was placed in the iron and the other one didn't. Overall, both the wool and the silk came out a medium brown with overtones of orange, and they smells amazing. You can really smell the rich forest of the lichen in the wool and hints of lively rufous tones in the browns. That's it for now. Don't forget, if you're interested in foraging in lichen with lungwort, please be sure to check its conservation status in your region and don't collect where it's rare. Be sure to like and subscribe for future videos on foraging and growing your own natural dyes.